Hi, good morning. This is Mrs. Cruz, and today we will be finishing our reading of Chapter 4. So that'll take us to pages 28 to 36, and we will also be answering the last text assignment question today. Also today I will be opening up our discussion for Chapter 4, so just don't forget to make sure to either post your question and answer it to classmates on Google Classroom, or to attend a Zoom session today at 1. Okay, so 2 options that will give you full credit. Okay, yesterday we answered question number 3. So we're looking at Stacy and Mr. Morrison's relationship and how it changed. And we saw that when we know that Stacy broke the parents' rules. So you should be remembering right now, what rules did they break? And if you forgot, the rule was answered in number 2. So they break the rules of going to the Wallace store. So now we're finally at the end, where we're going to find out, what does Mama do in response? What's going to be her reaction to hearing that her children broke the rules? Okay, so let's find our place. Okay, now that I'm remembering as I'm scrolling through, we know that yesterday we left off with Big Ma talking about the Logan land once more, and we heard a little bit more. So just to kind of give a reminder there, we learned that yesterday the Yankee who was able to buy all the land, at one point he tried to sell it back. His name was Mr. Hollenbeck, and at one point he tried to sell it back to the Grangers, and at that point the Grangers didn't want to buy it, and so it was for that reason that Cassie's grandfather was able to buy some land. And then afterwards, the Grangers, like the most current Granger, Harlan Granger, was trying to buy back all of the land that was sold during that time. So that's kind of like his main mission, to get it back. And so far it says that he got back 800 of the acres that that his family had lost in the past. Okay, so I'm going to take this out. Whoops. Okay, let's keep going. But Grandpa, Mr. Old Jameson, wasn't interested in selling, period. Was he, Ma? Big Ma. They didn't care how much money Mr. Granger offered him, I declared with an empathetic nod. That's the truth of it, all right, agreed Big Ma. But when Mr. Jameson died in 1918, and Wade had come head of the family, he sold them 200 acres. He sold them 200 acres to Pa and Edward, and the rest of the land to Harlan Granger, and moved his family to Strawberry. He could have just as easy sold 1,000 acres to the Grangers and gotten more money, but he didn't. And till this day, Harlan Granger still hold against him, because he did it. That soft swish of the falling leaves made Big Ma look up from the pond and at the trees again. Her lips curved into a tender smile as she looked around thoughtfully. You know, she said, I can still see my Paula Edwards' face the day Mr. Jameson sold him them 2,000 acres. He put his arms around me and looked out at his acres. He put his he put his arms around me, then looked out at his new piece of land, then said exactly the same thing he said when he grabbed himself the first 200 acres. Said, Pretty Caroline, how you like to work this fine piece of earth with me? Did the exact same thing. Okay, so that part's interesting. It's kind of showing that the Jameson family, another white family, but they're connected to the Logan family in a positive way, because it looks here like when Mr. Jameson was able to, like, he wanted to sell the land, he made sure to sell part of the land to the Logan family, which he didn't have to do. It says here that he could have easily sold all of the land to the Grangers and made more money, but the fact that he actually sold them part of it is a big deal. Okay, let's keep going. She grew quiet then and rubbed the wrinkles down one hand as if to smooth them away. A gaze at the pond glassy, gray, and calm, until she was ready to go on. I had learned that at all times like these, it was better just to sit and wait than to go disrupting questions which might vex her. So long ago now, she said eventually in a voice that was almost a whisper. We worked real hard getting them crops sown, getting them reaped. We had us a time, but there was good times too. When we was young and strong, when we started out and we liked to work, neither one of us, I'm proud to say, was lazy, and we didn't raise us no lazy children neither. Had ourselves 6 fine children. Lost our girls when they were babies though. I suppose that's one of the reasons I love your sweet mama so much. But them boys grew strong, and all of them loved this place as much as Paul, Edward, and me. They go away, they always come back to it. Couldn't leave it. She shook her head and sighed. Then Mitchell, he got killed in the war, and Kevin got drowned. Her voice faded completely, but when she spoke again, it was hardened, and there was a determined glint in her eyes. Now all the boys I got is my baby boys, and your papa, and your Uncle Hammer. And they place as much as it is mine. They blood is in this land, and here that Harlan Granger always talks about buying it. He pestered Paul Edward to death about buying it. Now he's pestering me. She grumped angrily. He don't know nothing about me or this land. He think I'm gonna sell. She became silent again. A cold wind rose, biting through my jacket, and I shivered. Big Ma looked down at me for the first time. You cold? No, ma'am, I stuttered, not ready to leave the forest. Don't you be lying to me, girl, she snapped, putting out her hand. It's time we was going back to the house anyways. Your mama will be home soon. I took her hand, and together we left the Caroline. Okay, so final things that we learned, you should be asking yourself. So we learned that Big Ma had 6 children. Unfortunately, the 2 girls passed away, and then she had 2 other boys pass away, so she's left with 2. Uncle Hammer and Papa. Okay, despite our every effort to persuade Stacy otherwise, when Mama came home, he confessed that he had been fighting with TJ at the Wallace store and that Mr. Morrison had stopped it. He stood awkwardly before her, disclosing only things which he could honorably mention. He said nothing of TJ's cheating or that Christopher John Littleman and I had been with him, and when Mama asked him a question he could not answer honestly, he simply looked at his feet and refused to speak. The rest of us sat fidgeting nervously throughout the interview, and when Mama looked our way, we swiftly found somewhere else to rest our eyes. Finally, seeing that she had gotten all the information she was going to get from Stacy, Mama turned to us. I suppose you 3 went to the store too, huh? But before any of us could squeak an answer, she exclaimed, That does it! And she began to pace the floor, her arms folded, her face crossed. Although she scolded us severely, she did not whip us. We were sent to bed early, but we didn't consider that a punishment, and we doubted that Mama did either. How we had managed to escape a whipping we couldn't fathom until Saturday, when Mama woke us before dawn and piled us into the wagon, taking us southwest towards Smellings Creek. She said, Where we're going, this man is very sick and doesn't look like other people, but I don't want you to be afraid or uncomfortable when you see him. Just be yourselves. Okay, so here we have the effects of Stacy's actions. So we see here that I'm going to highlight this part where it says that she scolded them, but she doesn't whip them. She also just sends them home without eating. And then the next morning, she wakes them up really early. We rode for almost 2 hours before turning onto a backwoods trail. We were jarred and bounced over the rough road until we entered a clearing where a small weather-grayed house stood and fields stretched barren beyond it. As Mama pulled up on the reins and ordered us down, the front door cracked rarely open, but no one appeared. Then Mama said, Good morning, Mrs. Berry. It's Mary Logan, David's wife. The door swung wide then, and an elderly woman, frail and toothless, stepped out. Her left arm hung crazily at her side, as if it had been broken long ago, but had not been mended properly, and she walked with a limp, yet she smiled widely, throwing her good arm around Mama and hugging her. "Land sakes, child, ain't you something?" she exclaimed, "coming to see about these old bones. I just says to Sam, I says, who you reckon coming to see us old folks today? Those your babies, ain't they? Lord Almighty, ain't they fine? Sure is." She hugged each of us and ushered us into the house. The interior was dark, lit only by the narrow slat of gray daylight and allowed in by the open door. Stacy and I carried cans of milk and butter, and Christopher John and Little Man each had a jar of beef and a jar of Crowder peas, which Mama and Big Ma had canned. Mrs. Barry took the food, her thanks intermingled with questions about Big Ma, Papa, and others. When she put the food away, she pulled stools from the darkness and motioned us to sit down. Then she went into the blackest corner and said, "Daddy, who you suppose come to see about us?" There was no recognizable answer, only an inhuman guttural wheezing. But Mrs. Barry seemed to accept it, and went on, "Miss Logan and her babies. Ain't that something?" She took a sheet from the nearby table. "Gots to cover him," she explained. "He can't hardly stand to have nothing touch him." When she was visible again, she picked up a candle stump and felt around the table for matches. He can't speak no more. The fire burned him too bad, but he understands all right. Finding the matches, she lit the candle and turned once more to the corner. A still form lay there staring at us with glittering eyes. The face had no nose and no head and no hair. The skin was scarred, burned, and the lips were wizened black, like charcoal. As a wheezing sound echoed from the opening that was a mouth, Mama said, "Good morning to Mr. Barry's husband. Say good morning to Mr. Barry's husband, children." The boys and I stammered a greeting, and then sat silently, trying not to stare at Mr. Barry during the hour, so that we remained in the small house. But Mama talked softly to both Mr. and Mrs. Barry, telling them news of the community as if Mr. Barry were as normal as anyone else. After we were on the road again, having ridden in thoughtful silence over the wooded trail, Mama said quietly, "The Wallaces did that, children. They poured kerosene over Mr. Barry and his nephews and lit them on fire. One of the nephews died. The other one is just like Mr. Barry." She allowed this information to penetrate the silence and then went on. "Everyone knows they did it, and the Wallaces even laugh about it. But nothing was ever done. They're bad people, the Wallaces. That's why I don't want you to ever go to their store again, for any reason. You understand?" Okay, so here we have a reason for them not going to the Wallace store. She's saying that they're not good people, that they're the reason why Mr. Barry is in that condition, since they poured kerosene, which is like gasoline, over him and burned him alive. So I think this is another effect of Stacy going to the Wallace store. So let's see what should we highlight. Okay, I think I'm gonna highlight this first one because it says that she's trying to talk to them about why they kind of went there. Okay, let's read a little bit more. We nodded, unable to speak, as we thought of the disfigured man lying in the darkness. On the way home, we stopped at the homes of some of Mama's students, where families poured out of tenant tracks to greet us. At each farm, Mama spoke of that bad influence of the Wallaces, of smoking and drinking permitted at their store, and asked that the family's children not be allowed to go there. The people nodded and said she was right. She also spoke of finding another store to patronize, one where the proprietors were more concerned about the welfare of the community, but she did not speak directly of what the Wallaces had done to the Barrys. As she explained later, that was something she wavered between the known and the unknown. To mention it outright to anyone outside of those with whom you were closest was not wise. There were too many ears that listened for others beside themselves, and too many tongues that wagged to those who they shouldn't.